he remembers nothing of who he was before. No name, no home, no family. Only fragments, flashes of a child's laughter echoing through the ruins of a hive city, the warmth of sunlight filtered through dust and smoke. Then, the memory cuts to black. The next thing he remembers is pain. Endless, all-consuming pain. His rebirth began in the cold, sterile chambers of Titan, the fortress moon of the Grey Knights, where the Emperor's chosen are forged from the ashes of the Imperium's most broken sons. Hundreds were taken, selected from the ranks of the dead and the damned, and brought here to become something more. But not all would survive. Most wouldn't. For every soul that endured the trials, 1,000 were erased from existence, purged from records, forgotten by all. The Imperium would never know their names, their sacrifice, or their screams. The voice of the Inquisitor echoed in his skull during those early days of torment. You are not human anymore. You are the Emperor's wrath made flesh. He wanted to believe that. He wanted to believe that there was a reason for his suffering. But deep down, a sliver of doubt lingered, a faint, forbidden whisper that asked, what if this isn't salvation? What if this is damnation? The trials began with the mind. They peeled away memory, emotion, and identity until nothing remained but obedience. In the psychic crucibles, the recruits were tested against their own nightmares, forced to face demons clawing their way from the depths of their thoughts. Those who faltered were consumed. Those who endured were marked, scarred in body and soul, their humanity burned away in the Emperor's cold light. Then came the genetic rites. They called it the implantation. 1,000 agonies condensed into a single word. Gene seed from the Emperor's own lineage was infused into their flesh, rewriting them from the inside out. Bones broke and reformed. Muscles tore and healed. Organs multiplied and changed. The screams of hundreds filled the sanctum, but not all voices went silent afterward. Some continued, long after the body had ceased to exist, echoes of pain imprinted on the psychic walls of Titan. Days blurred into months, months into years. The recruits were stripped of names and given numbers. Each number was a promise of how to become something more than mortal. Yet, in the quiet hours between trials, he could still feel the ghost of his old self whispering through the cracks of his mind. A name he couldn't remember. A mother's face he could no longer see. But the Grey Knights had no use for such weakness. They erased it all. In its place, they planted a single truth: the Daemon fears the Grey Knight. When the psychic trials ended, the survivors were few, pale, hollow-eyed figures who had stared into the immaterium and not gone mad. Their reward was the final ordeal, the soul binding. One by one, they were led into the sanctum of silence, a cathedral carved from black stone and veined with silver wards. There, the librarians called upon the Emperor's light, binding their souls directly to his divine will. It was said that in that moment, each initiate glimpsed the Emperor himself. He didn't see light. He saw fire. An infinite expanse of burning souls, screaming in eternal agony. He saw the truth: the Emperor's divinity was not gentle. It was absolute. It consumed everything. And in that instant, he understood what it meant to be a Grey Knight. They were not men of faith. They were prisoners of it. When the ritual ended, he awoke on the cold stone floor. His skin shimmered faintly with sigils of psychic protection etched into his flesh. His eyes glowed faintly with silver fire. He was reborn, a weapon forged in the Emperor's image, stripped of past, stripped of fear, stripped of choice. But as he knelt before the Grand Master and took his oath, a quiet dread gnawed at him. Because even though his mind was blank, his heart still remembered how to fear. And somewhere deep within, the last fragment of the man he once was whispered a truth the Emperor would never allow him to say aloud. The storm was alive. Warp lightning clawed across the sky, rending reality into shreds of shrieking color. Beneath that writhing tempest, a dying world burned, its cities collapsing into molten ruin as the veil between dimensions thinned. The Grey Knight stood among the ashes, his silver armor gleaming with sacred runes, the psychic wards humming faintly against the screaming wind. This was his first deployment, and already the galaxy had turned into a vision of hell. They called the planet Darnath 9 a frontier world once devoted to the Imperial Creed. Now, it was nothing more than a wound in reality, bleeding chaos into the void. The demonic incursion had begun 3 solar cycles ago, and Imperial reinforcements arrived too late. The guard regiments stationed there had been slaughtered or corrupted. What few survivors remained were shadows of men hollow-eyed, muttering prayers to gods not their own. The Grey Knights had come not to save the planet, but to erase it. To cleanse it in fire so pure that not even the memory of corruption could survive. That was their duty. Their curse. He had trained for this moment his entire reborn life, for this perfect expression of purpose. Yet, as he stepped through the ruined cathedral where his squad had established a psychic ward line, he felt something he could not name. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was recognition. The air here pulsed with something ancient, something that knew him as if the warp itself remembered who he used to be. Brother Justicar, the voice of his squad leader broke through the static in his helm. Maintain focus. The enemy manifests ahead. He acknowledged the command with a silent gesture, his halberd humming with psychic energy. Around him, 5 Grey Knights advanced through the ruins, each a living fortress of faith and fury, each bound to the Emperor's will by threads of light invisible to the mortal eye. Together, their minds formed a circle of iron discipline. No emotion. No hesitation. Only purpose. And yet, as the first daemon emerged from the burning mist, something deep within him recoiled. It was not the grotesque form that disturbed him. The daemon's body was a swirling abomination of muscle, ash, and laughter made flesh. What unsettled him was its gaze. It didn't look at him as an enemy. It looked at him as if it knew him. Do you remember me, child? The daemon's voice echoed inside his skull, bypassing sound altogether. Do you remember what you prayed for before they stole you away? His mind screamed. The psychic wards within his armor flared, burning away the words like fire searing parchment. But the damage was done. A memory flickered, a boy kneeling beside a dying father, whispering desperate prayers to the Emperor for salvation. The boy had prayed for deliverance. And deliverance had come not as light, but as abduction. He roared, channeling psychic energy through his halberd, cleaving the daemon in two. The creature screamed, its body dissolving into smoke that reeked of sulfur and despair. But even as it vanished, its voice lingered in his mind, "You are not his knight, you are his weapon." The words struck deeper than any blade. The battle raged for hours. The Grey Knights cut through hordes of warp-spawned horrors, their psychic chants forming a choir of steel and thunder. Every strike was a prayer, every death a sacrifice. Yet for all their might, the daemons kept coming, endless, tireless, laughing. By the time the final seal was cast and the rift closed, the world had been reduced to rubble. Millions of souls burned, not by chaos, but by imperial purity. Orbiting ships launched cyclonic torpedoes, erasing Darnath 9 from existence. The Grey Knights watched in silence as the fire consumed everything. Their mission was a success. The daemons were gone. The corruption purged. But as the Justicar stood in the ashes, the voice of that first daemon still echoed in his skull, soft and mocking. "You killed them to prove your purity. Tell me, knight, is that holiness, or hunger?" He closed his eyes, silencing the thought. Yet when he opened them again, the reflection on his armor showed not the face of a warrior of light, but the faint outline of something twisted behind the silver, something that smiled back at him. The fires of Darnath 9 had faded into silence, but the screams still lived within him. They followed him through the corridors of Titan, through the echoing halls of marble and iron where even the light felt heavy with judgment. To the rest of the Imperium, the Grey Knights were saints, warriors beyond sin. But within the fortress monastery, holiness was a burden heavier than any armor. Every breath was a vow, every heartbeat a prayer of denial. He walked past the reflection pools of sanctity, where initiates meditated before stone effigies of fallen heroes. Each statue bore an inscription not of triumph, but of purging. Every victory in the name of the emperor was written in blood. Every act of faith required annihilation. He had seen entire worlds die just to keep one daemon from slipping through the veil. The galaxy called it purity. He called it silence, the silence that follows when nothing human is left to speak. Weeks passed, and the inquisitors came again. They demanded testimony not of what he saw, but of what he felt. It was a ritual of control disguised as devotion. They tore through his mind with psychic probes, searching for even a flicker of corruption. He endured it without resistance. That was the rule. Submission was faith. Doubt was sin. Yet, beneath the probing tendrils of their psychic intrusion, something stirred, a thought so deeply buried that even the Emperor's light struggled to reach it. If we must erase worlds to remain pure, then perhaps purity is just another word for death. He buried that thought quickly, sealing it behind walls of obedience. To question was to fall. To doubt was to invite the daemon. But the seed was planted, and it began to grow. When the next campaign came, he was sent to Sakaar Prime, a forge world torn apart by a cult of Tsianch. The skies were fire, the ground was ash, and the manufactorums burned with blue warp flame. The cultists were once humans, engineers, priests, children, all twisted into shapes that defied nature. As his squad descended upon them, he felt that familiar split inside his chest, the soldier who obeyed, and the man who still remembered what mercy used to feel like. They fought not for victory, but for obliteration. Each swing of his halberd cut through bodies and illusions alike. Psychic wards flared as daemons erupted from the shadows, their laughter echoing in languages older than stars. The Grey Knights fought as one, voices raised in chants that cracked the fabric of reality. Yet amid the chaos, a figure approached him, a robed cultist, unarmed, eyes filled not with madness but sorrow. "Stop," she whispered. Her voice trembled, human and frail. "They lied to you. We prayed for salvation, and you came, not to save us, but to end us." He hesitated just for a heartbeat. In that pause, he saw her memories ripple through the warp, a mother praying to the emperor as the Inquisition burned her city, believing she was being purified. She had turned to chaos not out of hate, but despair. That single hesitation cost him. A daemon emerged from the air, cleaving through her body as if she were nothing but smoke. Her last breath was a whisper he couldn't forget: "You are no different." He destroyed the daemon with a psychic storm so fierce that the air itself ignited, vaporizing everything within reach. But when the flames died, he found himself staring at the ashes of both daemon and human alike, indistinguishable from one another. The report claimed total success. The cult extinguished. The world reclaimed. But in his private reflections, he wrote only 6 words. "I can no longer tell the difference." When he returned to Titan, the librarians examined him again. They found no trace of corruption, no whisper of heresy. His faith was intact, his mind unwavering. But they did not see the truth. The corruption was not in his soul, it was in his purpose. Every time he lifted his blade in the Emperor's name, he felt the echo of that woman's final words. Every mission blurred the line between holiness and horror. And when he looked at his reflection, he no longer saw a man or even a warrior. He saw an empty vessel filled with borrowed light, a light that burned not to illuminate, but to consume. The Grey Knight's purity was perfect. And that perfection was the most terrifying thing of all. Titan was silent, but beneath its silence lived a storm. The fortress monastery gleamed like a shrine to eternity, its towers piercing the void, its catacombs filled with the whispers of the dead. Yet in those sanctified halls, something deeper stirred. Something forbidden. The Grey Knight had begun to hear the voices again, not of daemons this time, but of the Emperor himself. Or so he was told to believe. At first, the voice came in dreams, a soft command, calm and absolute: "You are my will." You are my flame. But as the nights passed, the tone changed. It began asking questions instead of giving orders. Why do you fight, child? Why do you burn what I once gave life? He woke each time drenched in cold sweat, his psychic wards pulsing faintly with warning light. No one else reported hearing such things. When he confessed it to the chaplain, the old warrior merely placed a gauntlet hand on his shoulder. Visions are trials, brother. The emperor tests those he loves most. Endure them. Purity is pain. But he couldn't shake the unease. If these were trials, then why did they sound less like the emperor and more like truth? Weeks later, he was summoned to the lower sanctum, a place few knights ever saw. The summons came from the Liberius itself. As he descended the endless staircases of black marble, he felt the air grow heavier, thicker with psychic energy. The walls shimmered faintly with sigils older than the Imperium. He knew he was walking into a place where even faith dared not speak. Inside the sanctum, he found a single librarian waiting, a pale, hooded figure whose armor bore no markings of rank. Only a sigil etched in silver, the Inquisition's eye. Brother, the librarian said, his voice a whisper of thunder. You have seen too much, felt too much. Tell me, have you ever wondered where our power truly comes from? The question struck like a blade. He tried to respond with doctrine, the words he had been conditioned to speak. Our strength is the Emperor's gift. We are his psychic flame. Lies, the librarian interrupted, his tone cutting through the silence. The Emperor does not gift. He takes. You know this, deep within. You've seen it, haven't you? In your dreams. The knight's breath caught. The librarian turned, revealing a sealed stasis vault behind him. What I am about to show you is heresy in every tongue of man, he said. But heresy is only truth wrapped in fear. He opened the vault. Inside was a containment field pulsing with warp light, and within it, bound in silver chains, floated something alive. A fragment of a daemon, torn from the immaterium, screaming silently in agony. Yet its aura felt familiar. Not like the daemons they fought, but like the Emperor's light itself. It radiated both holiness and horror. This, the librarian said, is what powers our purity. Every rite, every weapon, every ward upon Titan stones draws upon the same source. Not just the Emperor's will, but what he conquered. We channel the warp, the very thing we claim to destroy. That is why we cannot fall to chaos. We already walk within it. The knight felt his heart freeze. The truth was too vast, too monstrous to grasp. All his life, he had believed they were untouched by the corruption of chaos. But now he saw the irony carved into their existence. They were not immune to the warp, they were part of it, bound and shackled in the Emperor's name. The librarian's eyes glowed faintly. Tell me, brother, do you still believe you are pure? Before he could answer, alarms blared through the sanctum. Psychic wards ignited across the chamber. The daemon fragment inside the containment field had stirred as if awakened by their words. Its gaze met his, and in that moment, he heard its voice in his mind, calm, sorrowful, and familiar. You cannot destroy what you are, child of Titan. You are the flame of the same fire you fear. He staggered back, clutching his head as the psychic noise threatened to tear his mind apart. The librarian roared, summoning his psychic strength to seal the vault. When the light finally died, the room was silent again. The librarian looked at him with weary eyes. Forget what you saw, he said. Forget, or you'll never return from the shadows. But forgetting was impossible. The image of the chained daemon burned in his mind, as bright and blasphemous as the Emperor's own halo. That night, as he knelt in the chapel of purity, he whispered a prayer he had never dared speak before. Emperor, if you hear me, tell me this, did you save us from the darkness, or did you bind us to it? Only silence answered. But in that silence, he finally understood why the emperor never spoke back. Because perhaps the emperor, too, feared what the answer might be. The chapel was empty when they came for him. No warnings, no summons, only the sound of armored footsteps echoing through the sanctum like judgment itself. He knew before they spoke that his time had come. The Inquisition tolerated no questions, no doubts, not even from those born of the emperor's own design. He was taken without resistance. Through the cold halls of Titan, past statues of angels carved from iron, through corridors lined with the names of the pure. They led him deep below the fortress, deeper than he thought possible. The air itself seemed to tremble there, heavy with psychic residue and echoes of prayers long since burned away. In the heart of that abyss stood a single chamber, vast and silent, its walls inscribed with runes that pulsed like dying stars. There, upon a throne of obsidian, sat the Supreme Grand Master, his face a mask of serenity carved from devotion and exhaustion. "Brother Justicar," he said softly. "Do you know why you have been brought here?" He did not answer. The Grand Master's gaze pierced through him, reading his thoughts as one might read a confession written in blood. "You have seen what should never be seen," the old warrior continued. "You have touched knowledge that corrodes the soul. And yet you still live. That is both a miracle, and a danger." The words hung between them like the edge of a blade. "What I saw was truth," he finally whispered. "You speak of purity, but everything we are, everything we wield is born from the same corruption we claim to destroy. Tell me, Master, if the Emperor's will demands lies, then what is holiness but obedience to fear?" The Grand Master rose slowly. The weight of centuries moved with him. "You mistake understanding for rebellion, child. The truth you fear is not corruption, it is necessity. The Emperor must wield the warp, for it is the only weapon that can defeat itself. He is not our savior. He is our containment." He felt the words strike his soul like hammer blows. The Emperor, the god they worshipped, was not a beacon of light, but a wall against oblivion. An eternal prison holding back the tide. And the Grey Knights? They were the wardens, their existence a chain binding the cosmos together. For the first time in his life, he felt no faith, only clarity. "Then we are slaves," he said quietly. "Not soldiers. Not saints. Slaves bound to a corpse that cannot die." The Grand Master looked at him for a long, sorrowful moment. Then he spoke the words that ended all argument. "Yes. And that is the horror of it. We are slaves to duty, and duty is all that keeps the universe from screaming itself apart." Before he could respond, the chamber shook. The psychic wards along the walls flared to life, casting everything in cold blue light. A rupture had opened somewhere above, a breach in reality itself. The warp had found them. Demons poured into the upper sanctum, howling across the void. Titan trembled under the weight of the invasion. The Grand Master turned toward the alarms. "You will fight, Brother Justicar. You will fight because there is nothing else left to do." And he did. Through corridors drowned in warp light, through shrines defiled by claw and flame, he fought. His halberd was a streak of silver fire, his voice a psalm of fury. But with each daemon he struck down, he saw more of the truth reflected in their eyes, not hatred, but recognition. They saw him for what he was, a mirror. The final battle took place in the Sanctum of Souls, where the rift had split open like a wound in the world. He stood before it, psychic energy burning his armor from within. The demons swarmed, whispering his name, his true name, the one he had forgotten long ago. It broke something inside him, something he had thought long dead. In that moment, he saw everything. The Emperor upon his golden throne, not as a god of mercy, but as a dying sun chained to the warp, devouring itself to keep the galaxy from collapsing. The light that sustained them was not divine grace, it was the slow immolation of a god trapped in his own eternity. And the Grey Knights? They were the sparks that kept that fire alive. Each battle, each death, each act of devotion fed the prison's flame. He raised his weapon one final time. "For the Emperor," he whispered. But this time, the words felt hollow, not a prayer, but a eulogy. He stepped into the rift. Silver fire erupted around him, consuming flesh, armor, and soul. His scream merged with the warp, neither man nor daemon, neither light nor dark. In that instant, he became what all Grey Knights inevitably become: not saviors, not martyrs, but fuel for the Emperor's dying light. When the rift finally closed, Titan stood silent once more. The invasion had ended. The records would mark the battle as a victory, the loss of one knight as honorable sacrifice. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of eternity, the Emperor's dying flame burned a little longer. But the universe was darker for it. Because purity, when pushed far enough, becomes indistinguishable from the void it seeks to destroy. Centuries passed. Titan endured. The galaxy turned and bled and burned again, as it always had. Empires crumbled, gods screamed, and the Imperium of man staggered ever closer to its inevitable twilight. Yet through it all, the Grey Knights remained silent, watchful, unyielding. The secret that had consumed one of their brothers was buried deeper than any tomb, sealed beneath layers of dogma and fear. But silence does not erase truth. It only buries it until the ground itself begins to whisper. The archives of the Ordo Malleus still record the hero of Darnath 9, a nameless warrior who gave his life to close a warp rift that would have devoured entire systems. His deeds are praised in chants sung by voices who do not know what they are praising. His armor, or what remains of it, rests in a shrine lined with silver. Pilgrims of Titan pass by and bow their heads, murmuring prayers to a man they will never know, a man who dared to see the Emperor not as light, but as fire. And in that shrine, beneath layers of Shinnick warding and holy scripts, there lies an echo. Not a voice, not a soul, just a faint vibration in the warp, repeating endlessly like a heartbeat that refuses to die. Those few librarians who have felt it during meditation describe it as sorrow. Not anger. Not despair. Just the grief of something that once believed it was pure. Every few centuries, during the long nights of the Imperium's decay, one or two Grey Knights begin to hear it. A whisper. A question. Do you remember what you were before the light? Some ignore it. Some pray until it fades. And some, the rare, quiet few, carry the question with them into battle, knowing that the answer will never come. They fight, they die, and their ashes feed the machine of faith. The galaxy calls them holy. The Inquisition calls them incorruptible. But the warp knows them by another name, the Chained Ones. For even the daemons, in their madness, recognize the cruelty of their existence. To fight forever without hope. To kill in the name of a god who cannot hear them. To die knowing their victory only fuels the fire that devours them. The Emperor sits upon his golden throne, his decaying body the heart of a machine that holds the galaxy together. His soul, vast and fragmented, stretches across time, consuming and sustaining, blessing and burning in equal measure. Every prayer, every sacrifice, every act of purity feeds the same eternal inferno. And among that inferno, flickers a single spark, the echo of a Grey Knight who once dared to see the truth. He no longer knows his name. He no longer remembers his face. But he remembers the moment he saw the Emperor's light not as salvation, but as a cage. He remembers stepping into the rift not out of faith, but out of defiance. And that small act, that final refusal to surrender his soul entirely, lives on like a flaw in the Emperor's perfect order. Sometimes, when the warp storms rage too close to Titan, the librarians hear it faintly, a voice that does not belong to daemon or god, whispering through the void. The daemon fears the Grey Knight. And somewhere beyond that whisper, quieter still, comes another. But the Grey Knight fears the truth. The universe spins on. The Imperium survives another millennium, another war, another lie. The Grey Knights continue their endless vigil, saints forged in shadow, purity bound in chains. And the echo remains, waiting for the day when one of them dares to listen again. Because the truth never dies. It only waits. And when the last grey night falls, and the Emperor's light finally flickers out, the galaxy will fall silent, not with screams, not with glory, but with understanding. That the purest faith was always built on the darkest truth. Have you ever wondered what becomes of a soul that stands too close to the light? In the endless black of the immaterium, where reality folds in on itself and time becomes a meaningless echo, something moves. It is faint like the last heartbeat of a dying star, but it is there. A pulse. A whisper. A memory. The remnants of the grey night known once as Justikar Malchin drift in the tides of unreality, untethered from the flesh that burned and the armor that shattered. His body perished upon the cursed moon of Varnax, but his essence, it lingers. The daemon that devoured his brothers is gone, erased by the psychic blaze of his final sacrifice, yet fragments of its essence crawl still in the corners of the warp. There, in that endless sea of madness, predator and prey circle one another, neither alive, nor truly dead. The daemon's voice is a low tremor, speaking in languages not meant for mortals. And through it, faint but defiant, answers another, the soul of a grey knight who refuses oblivion. Malchin's will is a flame that does not extinguish. It is a memory of oaths, a spark of the Emperor's light buried in the dark. And in that storm of madness, he fights still, not with blade or bolter, but with memory, with defiance. He is no longer a man, nor even a ghost. He has become an echo of faith, a shard of humanity bound in eternal resistance. Through the endless screaming of the warp, his voice whispers into reality, faint, almost imperceptible, carried on psychic currents to the minds of those who dare to listen. Somewhere, in the fortress monastery of Titan, a young initiate awakes from his meditation, trembling. He has heard something, a distant murmur that spoke his name. It says, "Endure. The battle never ends." The instructors dismiss it as warp interference, nothing more than the ghosts of dead worlds. But in the depths of his soul, the initiate knows better. He feels it, the same burning conviction that drives every grey night into the jaws of death. The same unyielding spark that refuses to fade, even in eternal night. And so, the cycle begins anew. The Emperor's chosen continue their silent war, guided by whispers that may be divine, or may be the remnants of those who never found rest. The warp hungers. The daemons stir. The light burns dim, yet it burns still. Because even in death, a grey knight does not fall silent. He becomes the whisper beyond the veil. The galaxy moves on, heedless of the countless battles waged in shadows beyond mortal sight. Worlds burn. Empires crumble. And yet, the grey knights endure, unseen and uncelebrated, their sacrifices recorded only in the whispers of the warp. To the masses, they are myths, saints, angels of vengeance, faceless figures who appear in times of horror, strike with devastating precision, and vanish without a trace. But those who know the truth understand something darker. The grey knights are not saints. They are the Emperor's tools, sharpened to perfection, forged in fire and psychic torment, bound to a purpose that is both holy and horrific. Each one is a living testament to the price of purity, to the loneliness of obedience, to the burden of knowing the truth while carrying a lie. And yet, for all their suffering, for all the worlds purged and souls extinguished in the name of duty, something endures. It is not glory. It is not salvation. It is the echo of defiance, a spark of human spirit preserved even in those stripped of flesh, fear, and identity. The Justicar's voice, faint and eternal, drifts through the warp, guiding, warning, reminding, the battle never ends, but we endure. In the end, that is the mark of a grey knight. Not victory, not fame, not even holiness, but endurance. A silent testament that even in a galaxy consumed by war and darkness, the light of defiance can burn, faintly, eternally, against the void. And somewhere, in the quiet of the cosmos, the whisper lingers. The daemon fears the grey knight, but the grey knight fears the truth. The universe may forget their names, erase their deeds, and sanctify their deaths. Yet in that fleeting moment when the warp trembles and the stars shiver, the silent testament of the Grey Knights endures unbroken, unyielding, eternal. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.